one of those mysterious figures. I think that the most appropriate part of the fact that Jerry West is the logo is that it's faceless, it's a silhouette, it's therefore got kind of like this mysterious intrigue to it, and that's Jerry. That's Jerry. Even the stories we shared about how he, quote unquote, supposedly helped the Warrior Dynasty. I bet most Warrior fans, and this is something we can chase a little bit, and I know the guys did earlier today with their conversation with Bob Myers, and we'll let you hear that for sure today, this afternoon. But I think most Warrior fans, you go around with the Jerry West stories not knowing if they're actually even true. Did he stand on a table and say, I'm out if you trade Clay? Did he really do that? Did he sit down with Kevin Durant and convince him to come to the Warriors by saying, you don't even know what an open shot looks like? Playing with Russell Westbrook, okay, you guys have been pretty good. Wait till you see the open looks you get on this team. And that actually is what convinced Kevin Durant to become a Warrior. I'll sit here, look you in the eye right now and go, I have no idea to what level those things are true. And even when you hear Bob Myers talk about it, it's kind of like, ish, yeah, and then they kind of dodge it a little bit. Yeah. There's some sort of like ghostly, mysterious aura that sits around Jerry West. I do know he had some hell of an impact on this city, this team, and this dynasty, though. Yeah, all you have to do is listen to Bob Myers earlier and talk about, what he meant for Bob and the organization, just to have that level of gravitas. And one thing that Bob said that really stuck with me is that if Jerry West made a phone call to a player, a coach, a referee, an executive, an owner, the commissioner, that call gets taken. And I wonder about that now with this Golden State Warriors team and, this regime. Mike Dunleavy Jr., a guy who's been around the league a long time, he doesn't have the same level of gravitas as Bob Myers, and nobody has what Jerry West had, certainly. But I wonder if that is something that is really more important than we think about an organization trying to make these big, bold moves. Take a listen to a couple of things from Bob Myers talking to Steiny and Evan today. Just a phenomenal conversation on both of those mysterious ideas, Klay Thompson and Kevin Durant. First, this is Bob's response on the story that Jerry West threatened to leave the Warriors if they traded Klay Thompson for Kevin Love.
That is like this mythical story. And I always tell people the idea that was as close as people thought there was nothing going on in the NBA. That story dragged. And I always tell people, we never got as far as people think. And they don't believe me or whatever. And I say, had that deal been close, we would have requested, Kevin Love's medical, because he had some medical stuff going on, and we never did. Sure, our job was to look at it, but Jerry, it never got to the point where we want to do it, and Jerry said, if we do it, I'm out of here. It never got to that level, but it's a fun story for people to tell, and people remember it in such a way. But he certainly, and Steve, we all love Clay. I mean, and people want to say that had Jerry not stepped in, that wasn't, Joe loved Clay, Steve, everybody, but he was a big fan, and that kind of took on a life of its own. But no, that one, I don't know if I can ever talk that one down. But it's fair to say that he didn't want to do that. No, he didn't want to do it. Yeah. No. He did not want to do it. Yeah. But to the point of like everybody else did, that part isn't true. But he definitely didn't want it. Okay, so he didn't want it. What's weird is to listen to Bob talk, you're like, yeah, Jerry didn't want it. Nobody else did either. Right. Well, then why did it get as far as somebody did? Somebody was into the idea. Well, how far did it get? I don't know. That's kind of what Bob was saying there. Like, they didn't even get to the point where they wanted to get Kevin's medical. So it was an idea. Well, who called who? Was it just an idea? Was it an offer? Did the Warriors call the Wolves? Who was interested in it at all? Right. That, I don't know if we ever will know all the details of that, but we do know that it was an idea. And was it an offer? Probably not. Was it a conversation? Absolutely. Yeah. But if it was an offer, then it would have gotten to the point of, all right, let's get Kevin's medical and let's see about, they get Clay's medical, and then we really look at it and then we see if it's going to be something that actually happens. Yeah. I mean, I do see
I loved the comment. Someone texted the previous show. Jerry could not stand the idea of seeing the Celtics win another title, so he left prior to these NBA Finals being over. Maybe Jerry also could not stand the idea of Klay Thompson in another uniform.
Right.
So he left prior to it happening.
Yeah, that's a little too dramatic for me.
Obviously, we're being a little whimsical here. But
a little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit. And, I think that both of those things are going to happen. Celtics up 2-0. I don't know if that's going to be a sweep, but I had Celtics in 5 at the start of it, and it feels like that's the way this is going to go. And Klay Thompson's probably going to get a better offer elsewhere, and he's probably going to go too.
It does feel that way. It absolutely does feel that way. We'll circle back to that in a little bit. Here's the other Bob Myers story with regard to how Jerry West had an effect on Kevin Durant coming here.
Jerry could pick up the phone and talk to anybody in the NBA. Everybody respected Jerry. Anybody. You throw a dart at the wall and it lands on a coach, a GM, an owner, a player, a commissioner. Everybody is taking his call. And so where Jerry was good in that process is after we left the meeting in the Hamptons, he just wanted to talk to Kevin. And Rich Kleiman helped make it happen. This was like early July after the meeting in the Hamptons. And just having Jerry West a part of something just makes it better. And I know people want to put percentages on, well, Kevin Durant came because of this or that or Curry, right? I mean, truth is probably more Curry than anything. But Jerry was certainly additive in the whole process because to my point about Jerry, when Jerry West calls you and says, hey, I think this would be great for you, people listen to that, and people respect that.
I really do think it's a name that we leave out too much when we talk about the last 12 years of Golden State Warrior basketball. I'm not saying he should be mentioned as much as Steph Curry, but think about the number of mentions, the thought process. As we put this whole thing together, we think about Steph, Klay, and Dre. I think those are the top 3. And then after that, you have Durant's role in a couple of them, Steve Kerr, Bob Myers, Joe Lacob. Those are probably how many names was that? That was 7 names.
Right.
Those are probably the most named names, I would think, when we're talking about this Warrior dynasty. But goodness, David West gets named more than Jerry West. And that's odd to me. When you think about what constructed this, what about the exchange of ideas, the thumbprint on what took place here, I think we leave this name out too much.
Agreed. And if you look at the timeline of the Lacob and Goober ownership, they bought it in, I believe, July of 2010 and in May of 2011. So 10 months later, they hired Jerry West. So it didn't take them very long to realize that they needed to have somebody who is a real NBA OG to come in here and mentor Bob Myers and work with the young staff. And Bob Myers, a guy who had never been in this role before. And, you had yet to hire Steve Kerr, and you had a young core that you were trying to build, and you wanted to bring in the best in the business. And that's what Joe Lacob does. He's a guy who brings in the best of the best to come in and try and run his organization.
888-957-9570. If you have anything that you want to share, or ask or add or whatever to the conversation as we remember Jerry West. And for me, especially when stuff like this happens, look, I didn't watch Jerry West play. I'm just like a lot of you, and I bet you are, Dibs, too. We've seen the plays. We know the history. I get a lot of the process, but it's always different when you experienced it yourself. And I never really watched. I'm not old enough yet to have watched Jerry West play basketball. So for me, I understand that he was Mr. Clutch. I understand that he went to the finals 9 straight times. I understand that he's the logo. But for me, the biggest part of Jerry West was actually the exec. And for me, a Golden State Warriors fan, it was these stories. And I love listening to Bob Myers talk about this because that is actually, while nowhere near the most important part of Jerry West's legacy, I think for a Warrior fan of a certain age, it actually is. That, to me, that is my number one entry point to Jerry West.
Right, but at the same time, I think you're right. When you look at who the most important Warriors were in this run, Jerry West doesn't get nearly the credit that he probably deserves to get. I mean, you would look at Steve and Steph and Clay and Draymond and Bob and all the rest of it. You had mentioned before Kevin Durant, certainly, but you look at all of the different people who were big players, and Jerry West doesn't get the credit that he probably deserves, and that's fine, and I get that, and it's one of those things where, Jerry West probably will be remembered for other things first and foremost, but around here, he was here for 6 or 7 years, and during that time, you went from, new ownership to a championship team, and he was a big part of it.
Larry Riley is the one who hired Jerry West and brought him to the Golden State Warriors. Larry Riley will join us in 40 minutes. So that's going to be a cool conversation.
I love it. Yeah. And Larry Riley was the one who drafted Steph Curry. So Larry Riley was a guy who really helped the transition from where they were to where they eventually became. And part of that was Jerry West as well. And I actually met Jerry West. It's funny you mentioned that. There was a Larry Riley press conference here in the city back in, it had to be about 2010 or 2011, somewhere in there. And I got a chance to go up and talk to Jerry West for, 2 or 3 minutes, not very long, and introduce myself and met the logo, and Larry Riley was there, and it was one of those moments I won't forget.
Yeah.
Down at the St. Regis.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Yeah, he was one of those guys, had an unbelievable presence about him. You know what I mean? Like, I've listened to a lot of people today talking about, because he was out there also.
Right.
In other words, I do think if you've worked in West Coast sports media for a while, you probably ran into Jerry West at some point. If you've worked in NBA circles, you've probably run into Jerry West. And he is one of those people that, while just a West Virginia nicest human being alive, it took a minute to wrap your head around approaching Jerry West and having a conversation. There was a presence there. No question. There was a huge, huge presence there. And so he's left in just such a clear mark on so many basketball teams, and was such a unique guy. But again, I love listening to all the stuff from Bob today. I can't wait to talk to Larry about this, because how it all came together. And I'm also mindful of the timing of this, because we're at least having a conversation. Maybe it's been going on for 2 years already. Some Warrior fans don't think it's even started yet, but we're in the midst of a conversation about, quote unquote, the end of all this. Are we here? Have we been here for a while?
Right.
Are we not here yet? Is Klay Thompson about to play for another team? All of those questions are currently on our table as Jerry West, one of the architects of it, leaves. And I don't know. There's some poetry there that has my mind spinning a little bit. Yeah,
and you could be looking at the last, 2.5 weeks or 3 weeks of Klay Thompson being a Golden State Warrior, and Jerry West was one of the people who, allegedly, and Bob Myers kind of refuted it, but the legend is that Jerry West was the one who kept Klay Thompson as a Warrior, and he would have walked if Klay would have been dealt. And that's probably true. But Bob made it seem like there were more than just Jerry West against the possibility of that deal. Listen, I don't want to offend anybody. I'm not a huge, my religion. I'm not a huge religious guy. Right. I think everybody's spirituality is that's up to them, right? And so the only reason I bring it up, though, you ever see those bumper stickers or whatever that say WWJD? Yeah. Right. What would Jerry do? What would? Wait. Yes. Am I getting that wrong? That's where I was heading. Oh, yeah. No. What do you think he would do? Like, that was the first thing. You going bumper sticker on me? The first bumper sticker radio? First thing that went to my mind, and I want to give you credit because you were my Twitter this morning. Man. Your text was how I found out that Jerry West, at age 86, had passed away. When you texted this morning, yeah. I was not online as this I was on my happening. Phone, and my baby girl was eating her egg, and she was doing great, and so I had a chance to whip out the phone, and I was like, "What? Yep, no, yeah, I'm sick of it." Well, I mean, he's 86 years old. Yes, and so again, that's not to say it's not sad. No, I always maybe my mind's a little bit weird like this, but when someone lives a life like this. And you get to be 80 or 90 or 86 or 95, and you leave such a mark to where people want to sit here and talk about you for a day or weeks or whatever, or just remember you. My
my visual, I don't actually do this, but my visual is just like standing ovation.
Yeah.
Like what a life. What a life. He died peacefully with his wife by his side is what we heard today. And so I'm not saying it's not sad, but I also don't feel like it's that sad. I feel like it's just, wow.
Yeah.
What a life. And how I bet Jerry felt so blessed to get to 86 and have achieved the things that he did and be surrounded by the people who surrounded him and all of that stuff. But when you texted, it was one of the first thoughts that went through my mind. We're sitting here at this moment of Warrior basketball. It's June 12th. July is right around the corner. And all I'm hearing from Warrior talkers, it feels like there is a procession right now. A drum beat that is being created so that everything we hear is preparing us Warrior fans for Klay Thompson's departure. And if we could only just have Jerry back for 5 minutes, I think that would be the question I'd ask him. Not tell me a story about Elgin Baylor. Hey, Jerry, before you go, this is a situation. What would you do? What do you think he'd say?
888-957-9570. What do I think he'd say?
What do you think he'd say?
I think he'd say it's time for Klay to go somewhere else. I don't think that we can afford Klay. I think that it's time for Klay to go out there and spread his wings and, try to find a new place to play, because I don't think that he would be willing to or want to pay Klay as much as other teams want to pay.
You know what's weird about this one? I mean, if you go back to what Jerry West famously did, and I'm sure it was about the person, not just the situation.
Right.
But at that time, what he basically was saying in really wanting to keep Klay Thompson, I believe in Klay, but hey, guys, stick with your plan. Stay with your young guy that you just your young lottery pick. Stay with that. Yes, the other guy, that's attractive. It's more established. Stick with your young guy. All right, apply that to now. Would he say the same thing? I really don't know, because in some ways when people are like, yep, Klay's getting old, time to move on, it's like a lot of you want to replace him with someone even older. We should move on from Klay and get Jimmy Butler. Huh.